The debut book by Diego the Podcaster, I Remember the Crib, delves into one man's extraordinary encounters with the strange and paranormal. Diego the Podcaster takes readers on a journey through a collection of short real-life stories that unveil his untold experiences. Diego offers a unique glimpse into a life filled with inexplicable events that have remained a secret until now. The readers are invited to explore the mysteries and wonders that have shaped Diego's existence, that gave birth to his podcast, Let's Find Out with Diego. Available now on Amazon Kindle. Published by Zombie Media.
Are you curious about the unknown, the unexplainable? Do you find yourself intrigued by the mysterious and paranormal side of our world? Join us on an adventure into the world of inexplicable discoveries and investigations that may someday give us the final answer as to what may be behind the veil of reality. The borders of space and time have opened once again, and transmitting from the mountains of West Virginia, it's time once again for Let's Find Out with Diego. The universe is waiting for you.
On this episode of Let's Find Out, our guest is a renowned figure in the realm of psychic phenomenon, a distinguished paranormal investigator and a highly acclaimed author with a multitude of prestigious accolades under his belt. Through his insightful books, he has not only brought enrichment and enlightenment to countless readers, but has also garnered international acclaim and prestigious awards, solidifying his reputation as a truly outstanding and influential individual in his field. All this plus more. Please welcome to Let's Find Out a new friend to our show, psychic and author, John Russell. John, my friend, welcome to Let's Find Out. It's an honor to have you on.
Oh, Diego, I appreciate it so much. Listen, it's an honor for me to be here. I appreciate it.
Oh, thank you. And we were talking before the show. I got on your websites, and there's so much there to cover. I honestly didn't know where to start, but I think I could pinpoint it pretty well. I think I have it. We're gonna be off to the races if you don't mind, because how do we cover 50 years of experience and enlightenment in 40 to 45 minutes? But I think we're gonna do a great job, of course. Now
we'll hit as many highlights as we can.
We'll do some highlight reels. We'll do a marathon of highlight reels.
There you go.
You've been a professional psychic now for over 50 years, and
yeah.
You provided readings in over 40 countries. I mean, that's pretty amazing.
It's mind-blowing. Yeah.
It is, if you don't mind, and you probably told this story about 1 million times. If you can go back in time, can you try to pinpoint or know when you realized that you had this gift, and when did that finally sink in?
Yeah, it all started when I was 5 years old, and I was in bed asleep, and my parents had left a nightlight on down the hall, so if I woke up in the middle of the night, I could see to get up and go to the bathroom, whatever. And so sometime in the middle of the night, I would say probably around 2 or something like that, for no apparent reason, I popped up wide awake, no drowsiness, no grogginess. I was just suddenly totally, completely wide awake. And I thought, well, man, this is the strangest thing. And I laid there in bed and listened a little bit. And I thought, well, maybe there was a noise outside that woke me up or something. And I laid there and listened, couldn't hear anything. And I thought, well, this is really odd. And so I raised up on my elbows just to kind of look around my bedroom. And I looked down the open bedroom door into the hallway where the nightlight glow was. And there was this elderly black gentleman peeping around the doorway that went off the hallway into the dining room, peering around the doorway, staring at me in bed. And my family wasn't black. We didn't have anyone black living with us or visiting us. I don't even think we had any black friends at the time, to be honest. And so my natural assumption as a 5-year-old kid is, here's somebody standing there in the flesh that doesn't belong to the family. We must have somebody that's broken in. So I screamed bloody murder. And he walked around the doorway, started down the hall towards the bed, towards my bedroom and towards my bed. He had his eyes locked on mine, never looked away. And his look wasn't menacing. It was a benign look. But, and I knew he was elderly because he had close cropped white hair and he had a white mustache. And I could tell you the clothes he had on. He was as solid as you or I. And he had on a long sleeve red plaid flannel shirt, had khaki pants, black shoes, and a black belt. And the closer he got, the more terrified I became. And I screamed again, howling at the top of my lungs. And my parents woke up and came running finally. And as they got close to my bedroom, he began to vanish. And he had been every bit as solid as you or I. He wasn't transparent, wasn't translucent. He was 100% as solid as any that you or I walked in the room. So he began to vanish. My parents came in, turned on the lights. And they was like, "What's wrong? What's wrong?" And my fright was so real that I managed to convince them that there was somebody in the house. And so my mother held me, and I was crying and shaking and carrying on. And my father, who was a pretty intrepid old boy, he went through the house, looked in the closets, looked in the beds, checked all the doors, checked all the windows. Of course, the house was locked up tight as a vault, and nobody in there but us in the flesh. And then it dawned on me, I had just seen my first ghost. And it was almost impossible to go back to sleep. It was like, why did he come? How can you be solid in the flesh wearing clothes and then vanish into thin air? Is he going to come back again? Is he going to want to talk to me? Is he going to ask me to do something weird or scary or strange? So this is the backdrop against which I'm trying to go back to sleep. And for weeks afterward, I'm looking over my shoulder all the time. Where's this guy at? Is he going to pop up again? And of course, horribly difficult to sleep. And about, I guess, around 2 weeks into that, this knowing came to me, this intuitive knowing. And I couldn't articulate it, being 5.5 years old. I couldn't explain it to anybody or talk about it. But I had this intuitive knowing that this black ghost had come to open up this portal to these paranormal experiences that I had been having, and that it was going to be supremely important to me and to others down the road. And it wasn't anything I dreamed or envisioned, hallucinated or imagined or daydreamed or whatever. These were paranormal experiences that began to occur on the physical realm. My parents witnessed them. Other people witnessed them. So I knew they were real. And so that began my experience with paranormal, the paranormal experiences. And I've had way over 1,000 of them now. A lot of times they've been witnessed by other people. We've recorded them, audio recorded, video recorded, photographs. And so that began to occur. And then as I got a little older, still between 5.5 and 6, I'd say, I was out in the backyard one day playing with a toy, and this car pulled in the driveway, and I did not recognize the car or the people. So I ran in the house. I said, "Mom, Dad, somebody's pulling the driveway. I don't know who it is." And I said, "Okay, we'll come out and look." So they came out and said, "Oh, these are friends of ours." And I'd never met them. I didn't know them. These were friends of my parents that I'd never met. So they got out, and they were standing on the sidewalk talking to my mom and dad, and I was goofing around with my toy. And I walked over close to them, and I was standing there looking up at them, and they kind of looked at me and smiled. And I just interrupted the conversation. I said, "You folks have just been on vacation." And everybody got real quiet. And I said, "You drove that car sitting in the driveway, and you have 2 kids, but they're not with you today, but you have 2 kids, and you took those kids on vacation." And I said, "You stayed at this hotel that had this many floors, and it was painted this color, and there were these trees out front that looked like this, and they were planted in these regular configurations, and the pool area around back was painted this color, and the chairs looked like this, blah, 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 blah." So the guy, this lady's husband, he was kind of looking at her, me, and my parents with this bemused look on his face like, "What in the world's going on?" And she was looking at me, Diego. Her eyes were big as saucers. Her mouth was literally agape. She was looking at me like I had cobras growing out my ears. And she was like, "How the hell could he possibly know this?" And my parents were like, and she goes, "How the hell could he possibly know this?" And my mother was like, "Oh, kids and their imaginations." And she goes, No. This is not kids and their imaginations. This is what we came to tell you about the vacation we just took. And we drove that car, and we took our 2 kids, and the hotel we stayed at looked exactly like John described. How the hell is that possible? How the hell could he possibly know that? And Mom was like, "Go play, John." I was like, "Okay, nice to meet you folks." And off I went. That was when I discovered my psychic gift. And I discovered I could see into people's lives. I could see their past, their present, their future, their emotions, their thoughts, what they'd been doing, what they were going to do, what was coming for them. And that was when I made that discovery.
And that is amazing. Now, at such a young age, during that time where the individuals came in the car and you told them about their vacation experience. And I'm going to try to frame this question right so I don't sound so crazy or uneducated in a way. When you were telling them about this trip, how was that? What kind of feelings came upon you? Where you felt that you were being guided? Was it a voice telling you and then you repeated it? Or was it kind of like an automatic download and you just knew?
It was something, it wasn't knowing, it was a certainty. And then accompanied with that, there were some visions. I could literally see the trip. I could see the kids with them. I could see the hotel and what it looked like and its configuration. And then there was some audible input as well from the spirit realm. So there were a lot of things going on as far as input. But the chief thing was an absolute knowing that what I'm receiving and what I'm telling you, this is fact. And I just knew it. I just knew it was a fact.
So it's almost just like a normal thing to you at that point. You're like, you already knew what went on. It was kind of just natural to you, and it evolved during the years, right?
Yeah, it was because, when you grow up that way, and by the way, that was the last time I was ever afraid of any paranormal experience was when the old black man scared me and opened up that portal, awakened my gift. And I never was afraid since. No matter what I experienced, I've been startled. Everybody gets startled. If you're standing there in your house and it's locked up and you're the only one home, you turn around, there's somebody in the flesh standing there. That startles you, and then they disappear, and you go, oh, okay, it's a ghost. So you go home, right? So I've been startled, but I've never been scared again. And when you're growing up that way and these occurrences happen so frequently, it's all you know. That's the normal way that you live. So there's nothing frightening or unusual or weird about it. It's just normal everyday life.
Wow. And then going back to the time, what we just talked about a few minutes ago about the African American gentleman that was the ghost of that house. Did you go back now as when you became an adult? Did you go back and try to do some research on the property, or did anything pop up about that ghost, or was he just the messenger that chose that form?
I think he was just a messenger that chose that form. I never did try and really do any research on the house or the area. And oddly enough, I have never, as far as I know, received anything directly from him again. There's been a few hints that he may have shown up in one form or another again at certain times, but nothing I could hang my hat on. But I've always been so grateful to him and so happy because of the incredible life that he enabled me to live and the number of people worldwide that he's enabled me to help and encourage.
And that's one of the things I was going to get into, because it's been over 40 countries.
Yes.
And how did that start? What was the first country that you were invited to share your gifts with or your readings?
Oh gosh, I don't even remember. I've never gone in person. I've always done everything by phone, so it's always been by telephone. And I don't even remember the first foreign country I read for. And it just grew, international clientele, and it just kept growing and kept growing. And I kept getting more countries and more countries. And it was just astonishing. Like I say, over the years, it's been over 40 countries I've read for. And I've read for people in Muslim countries, and I've read for people in Buddhist countries and all types of religions and belief systems and everything else. And it's just mind-boggling. It's just amazing to me. And it's been such a joy. And I remember when I started adding to the amount of countries that I had read for, I started keeping a list. I started writing it down because I was like, my God, what a gift. This is incredible. This is amazing. And I started keeping track, and last count was over 40 countries.
Wow. And with these readings, because I can only assume that perhaps they all spoke English, whether perfectly or not well. Was it ever done through an interpreter?
There was one that I did for a Russian businessman that was conducted through an interpreter. Wow, and that was way back a long time ago, decades ago.
And when now been doing this as long as you have been, do the voices ever shut off? Can you turn that off? Is it always constant? Is Is it normal, like listening to traffic or the birds?
It's on 24/7. It's on 24/7, and I'm comfortable with that. For me, that's normal, and it's not unusual for me to walk in a restaurant, see somebody, and the guys say, "Hey, go tell them this and this and this," And what's really great is that if they give me that message to give to someone, that means that they've prepared someone in advance to be receptive to that message. So but it's always on. It comes to me in my sleep, comes to me in my dreams, wakes me up. It's always there. But I'm used to that. I enjoy that. That's what I'm built for. That's what I was made for.
Yeah, I mean, you're kind of, I would call it a lightning rod for messaging,
Exactly. And for paranormal experiences.
And that's what, we're going to go into that as well, because I think you might have an advantage over certain paranormal investigators, because you bring something, not only experience, but you have the ability to be able to communicate. Can you do it obviously without using equipment?
Oh yeah.
But do you also use, do you also,
seldom, I very seldom use equipment. I don't have a need for it. And I think people rely too much on equipment, and then they start short circuiting their natural intuitive abilities and how they should be connecting normally. And I always tell people, I say, look, when you use equipment, maybe with the exception of EVP, when you use equipment, you're not getting communication, you're getting a demonstration. And then the demonstration is that, yes, someone's there. But for example, if you're using a REM pod, then unless you take it to the old school, blink once for yes, twice for no thing, and try and have a conversation, then you still haven't got a communication. You've got a demonstration. So I always tell people the purpose of any paranormal investigation is who's there, why are they there, what do they want to communicate, do they need anything from you, do you need anything from them?
Do you think I'm going to call them a generic term, I'm going to call them spirits, right?
Right.
Do they prefer the one-on-one way, or are they good with using the devices to communicate?
I think they prefer to have someone that communicate with them directly, because I can hold a real-time two-way communication with them and get relevant answers and information to my questions that we can validate in real time.
And when you communicate with these spirits or beings, now, every once in a while, the crossroads comes when we're talking about UFOs, we're talking about cryptids. A lot of these things, these highways kind of connect in a certain way. And you also have experience in UFOlogy as well, right?
Yeah, I do have a lot of UFO experience, and some really strange stories if you want to get into a few of those.
Oh, absolutely. Because I'm very curious to know, is because I'm assuming that UFOs will also have a spirit or a soul of some sort, because it might be biological beings. Are they more than just biological beings? Are they more enhanced? Obviously, they might be more enhanced than us. How does this work communicating with them?
Well, it's kind of been frustrating, Diego, over the years. I have tried to open myself up to communication with these beings and have not been able to. Now, I have had interaction with them in some of their craft that shows me that they tuned into my words and or thoughts and were able to give me a response that I asked for. But then after that, when trying to say, okay, well, why are you here? What's your focus? What are you trying to do? Are you here to harm us? Are you here to help us, or whatever? Are you indifferent? There's been no response. So that's been a very, very strange thing to me. And then being privileged to know some of the finest UFO investigators on the planet and have personal talks with them, they say the same thing. John, we don't know. We have a lot of theories. We have a lot of experiences to dig through and try and analyze. But in the final analysis, we still just don't know.
So in a way, they're harder to communicate with them than they are, I guess, human souls or spirits, correct?
Right.
And is it always humans, spirits you communicate with? Are there more ancient things out there that perhaps that were not human?
Yeah, there's a lot of ancient things out there that were never human that do communicate with me. I've communicated with nature spirits. I've communicated with animal spirits. There's a whole retinue of things out there that, people think that all there is, well, there's ghosts, there's deceased loved ones, and that's it. There's nature spirits that are alive or dead. There are things that we don't know exactly who and what they are that are out there in the spiritual realm. Not demonic, not satanic, not menacing, not evil, just different. And there are, animal ghosts and spirits out there, and so on and so forth. So, and I heard somebody the other day say, why didn't anybody ever communicate with a dinosaur ghost? Nobody ever talks about dinosaur ghosts. Well, we've kind of been blind to that. They're probably there. The spirits of them are probably there if you go out and try and make that connection. Because I've been able to make connection even with inanimate objects from the past. So, we limit ourselves and kind of blind ourselves in our paranormal investigations because we get dogmatic, we get ritualistic, we get hidebound. We say, oh, so-and-so who's world famous says it's this way and it can't be that way. And, you take that to heart, and then you miss out on this wide range of other experience that's out there.
It might be one of those self-imposed, I'll call it hypnosis, to where it keeps you in that cocoon of feeling safe because maybe you're afraid to step out of that bubble because you don't want to be proven wrong, that it could be possibly something you don't even know about.
Right.
And when they communicate with you, because let's talk about, because we talk about ancient spirits and stuff.
Sure.
Prior civilizations to maybe pre-Adamic race, have you heard anything from something like that? Because we're talking about maybe the Atlanteans or reptilians or anything like that.
Yeah. I have gotten the sense a communication with beings and peoples that go so far back that I can't even comprehend it, that it blows my mind. And the further I go with that, the more receptive I become to that. It's mind-blowing how old the earth is and how old civilized, intelligent people on the earth are, how far back they go. And I had a vision the other day, and this is going to be the first time on the air, an exclusive, that I've shared this with anybody. I had a vision the other day around the pyramids, and there's always been this talk of like the Baghdad battery and things like that, and the pyramids generating electrical energy and so on and so forth. And I had this stark, clear vision that came to me, and there were people that were walking around the pyramids, and there was like a town or a community or a settlement there that was kind of built around or near the pyramids. And there were these, looked to me like paved areas, like sidewalks. And it was evening, and people were out just strolling around town like people do. And they were walking by the pyramids, and there were these tall light poles with electric, not gas or flame or lanterns or torches. There were these tall light poles with electric lights on them, illuminating those sidewalks at night. That blew my mind.
You kind of got a little bit of a Polaroid of somebody telling you this is what was going on back in the day.
Exactly.
And that is amazing, because it's my understanding that a lot of these pyramids, I mean, they're putting certain configurations for a reason.
Yeah.
And we're thinking they're used to bury pharaohs, but as far as I know, I don't know. Have they ever found a pharaoh in there?
No, there's been no evidence that any pyramid was ever used for any kind of burial. And I mean, why would you build something that gigantic to bury one person in? I mean, even if they were an important individual, think of the intensive labor it took, even if it was accomplished with levitation, magnetism, something else we don't even know about. That's still a lot of work. When people don't understand the complexity and the depth of these things and how big they are and how huge the stones are and how precisely they fit. And, why would you do that to bury one person, even if that person was someone of significance? You wouldn't. No other country on the planet does anything that exotic or that extravagant, with their dead leaders. And so it's foolish to think that they were tombs. It doesn't make any sense as a tomb in any configuration.
No, it doesn't, because I think by the time they're done building this structure, let's say it takes like 500 or 1,000 years to get it just right. It's like, who are we burying now? I don't remember.
Yeah, really. Exactly. And I'm tuned in on that construction process as far as the duration. And what I saw was that these things went up in an amazingly short amount of time, an amazingly short time period. So that either shows extraterrestrial help and or influence or construction, or the knowledge transmitted to man to enable them to somehow use these principles to move and construct these giant stones, put them together, and this, that, and the other. I mean, we have engineers today with all the technology that we have saying we couldn't duplicate that. We couldn't do that, So you're looking at civilizations that if you just look and read the news every day, listen to the news every day, we're discovering that Earth and people and civilizations and all these things and sciences go back older and older and farther and farther and older and older and farther and farther. And now they're saying, oh, well, we thought the pyramids were this old. Now we think they're way older. And now we see this area, we've uncovered it, and it predates the pyramids. And then we're going back here, and there's evidence of societies way back beyond that, and on and on and on. So, we're just now beginning to really discover the depth of things. And, we think that we have this progression of the grunting caveman that discovers fire and then comes on up to do this and comes on up to us. And that's not the case at all, because I remember I went to a museum where they had the exhibit of the Pompeii eruption, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they had rooms that they created from there, and they had artifacts that they had dug up and preserved and were exhibiting, and so on and so forth. So this is what that eruption occurred, in 70 AD, something like that. So we're looking at 2,000 years ago. And in this exhibit, I turned around and there was a display case of period era, so 2,000 years old, gardening tools. And I knew exactly what each one was. One was a hoe, one was a shovel, one was a pitchfork, and it looked exactly what you'd go down to Home Depot and buy today. So we think, okay, we're so smart, we've evolved so far, we've come from the cavemen, blah, blah, blah. No. And to put the cherry on the frosting of the cake, I turned around to another display case, and there was a pair of tweezers, 2,000 years old, that looked exactly like what you would go down to the CVS and buy today. Exactly. So it's like, we have this misconception that people in the past were these grunting troglodytes running around. No, that's not the case. And the further back we go, instead of discovering that we were more and more and more primitive, we discover that we were more and more and more intelligent and enlightened.
Yes, almost like you're rediscovering something that was already invented.
Yes, exactly.
And there's a working theory out there. I mean, we could be with the megastructures, pyramids, different parts in different continents, where they might have been built through fallen angel technology or ancient giants or Nephilim related.
Right.
Where do you stand on that? Because there's a lot of theories out there. Because I can subscribe to some of it, because I don't think the common man back then may have been able to do this without any kind of help.
Right. That's my feeling, is that there has to be either some type of supernatural intervention or some type of some guidance or knowledge or intervention that we would call paranormal that apparently was normal at the time. And if giants roamed the land, that would be normal. It's like we have electric self-driving cars. That's normal. If giants roamed the land back then, that would be normal. And if the giants were able to, some of them were sympathetic and said, hey, we can show you this, or we can help you build this, or help you construct that, that would be normal. It's incredible to us, but it would be normal to the people of the time.
True. Kind of like if you were to go back to the 80s and then we figure out we have a supercomputer in our hands that does everything for us. We're like, there's no way. That's just Star Trek talk. But here we are.
Exactly.
And that's probably something that we reverse engineer from somewhere. And I'm always one of those that, and I know that our scientists always look at the stars, try to find answers or go into space, different planets. That's all fine and dandy. But if you were to put as much resources as turning it right back around here on Earth or in the oceans, you're going to be amazed what it is you're going to find.
Yeah, because again, if you read the news every day, look online every day, they're constantly discovering new species in the ocean. They're constantly discovering new things I didn't know existed. We're discovering places on Earth that we didn't know existed. And there was, how about the tribes that we didn't even know existed that have never made contact with people outside of their tribe? And then all of a sudden, oh, we found these guys. Wow. So yeah, we think we have all this knowledge. We think we have all this understanding. We haven't even scratched the surface of this thing yet. Diego, I saw a statement the other day that is so true. It says, what we know is a drop of water. What we don't know is the ocean. And I thought, man, is that ever the truth? Because, look, I've been a professional psychic for over 50 years, read for clients in over 40 countries, had thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of clients, done all this research, had all these experiences, thousands of experiences. And the older I get, the more questions I have. We just have barely scratched the surface, and we have so much work to do. And the way to do that work is to get away from dogma, ritual, tradition, ego, and say, okay, let's go where the truth leads us, no matter where that is. But on the way there, let's make sure we are following the truth, or at least trying to. Let's don't get off into the goofy avenues of the paranormal and the supernatural and the UFOs and things. There's a lot of ponies and frauds and fakes out there. And there's a lot of misguided people out there. And, you have to listen to every story, but then you have to evaluate that story. And you have to hold it up to, okay, I can hang my hat on this, or, well, this is going to take a lot more research, or this is obvious nonsense. We got to discard this. So it's a process that we have to adhere to.
As you're saying that, it's amazing because you kind of stole some of the thoughts out of my head. I was going to ask you a question. we're talking, and I'm going to use the term carnies for a second.
Yeah.
And this is no secret to anybody. I grew up in the age of televangelists.
Yes,
and showmen.
Me too. Yeah, me too.
I went to mostly, when I first started going to church, I'm Protestant, but I went to a Pentecostal church, which falls under the Protestant branch. And I see some very amazing things. I see some very ridiculous things.
Exactly.
And some certain things that make people who of my faith look like fools or clowns.
Yeah.
A circus show, if you will. Now, with going over to the psychic part of this, or psychics, pardon me, there's been several out there that I think have done more damage than good to those who are really in it for the right reasons. And this is what I want to say is common misconceptions about people with abilities like yourself and psychics that you probably know who are, and to use the term super legit, what are the common misconceptions about psychics?
Well, some of the common misconceptions about real psychics is that, the first thing you get is, if you're psychic, why haven't you won the lottery? That's one of the things. It's like, don't think I haven't tried. The other thing about psychics is, well, I'm your friend or I'm your client, and I was in this accident on the freeway and just barely escaped with my life, and my car was totally, why didn't you call me and tell me not to take the freeway that day, or warn me, or whatever? Well, I've got all these other clients worldwide. You're not the only one. I've got my own life I have to tune in on and deal with. I've got my spirit guides telling me, hey, John, you need to do this. Hey, John, you need to do that. I've got my family. I've got my friends and loved ones. It's like, I'm not God. No psychic on the planet is God. We don't know it all. We don't see it all. We're not able to control it all. And, we're human. We're fallible. We get tired. We get sick. We have to go eat. the hot water breaks, we have to call the plumber, everything just like everybody else. So, we're not immune to all the vagaries of this life. And also, no psychic on the planet, myself included, and I wish to God I were, but no psychic on the planet's 100% accurate. Over the years that I've been doing this, my clients have told me that I'm 80 to 90% accurate. Now, that's pretty impressive. But if you say, okay, let's take the high end of that and say I am 90% accurate in the readings. Now, these are my client statements, not mine. And let's say that I am 90% accurate. That means that 1 out of every 10 things falls through the cracks. And a lot of big things can fall through the cracks in that one that I missed. So no psychic on the planet is 100% accurate. Never will be. Just doesn't occur. No psychic on this planet. Listen to me, people, please. No psychic on this planet can guarantee you a job, return your long lost lover, cure your health, whatever. No psychic on the planet can do that for any amount of money, period. End of discussion. It's never going to happen. Does not occur. Nobody on the planet has that much power. It just isn't going to occur. The first thing you need to know about psychics is if they start with, oh, I see evil around you, or I see sickness, or there's darkness around you, or what, run, because here comes the con. And I've had to rescue people over the years from being conned out of tens of thousands of dollars from phony psychics. And you think, well, if they're that stupid, they deserve to be conned. The people that have been conned are usually people that are multiple college degrees, highly intelligent, on several businesses. Con artists are good, well, just like magicians. Magicians know how to fool you. I'm an amateur magician, and magicians know how to fool you. Con artists are good because they know how to fool you. It doesn't matter if you're dumb, if you're poor, if you're black, if you're white, if you're a rocket scientist or whatever. They know the buttons to push to get you suckered in, and they can do it. So, no psychic on the planet can legitimately promise you that. So those are some of the things you need to look at and be aware of.
And with anything, because there are those out there that they act as a psychic, but they have different kind of abilities to where reading body language, and
yeah.
I don't know what that method is, but eventually is people give them all the information they need, and they just pick something in there and just worm their way into their mind.
And there's a lot of things that they will do that are just the human condition of living on this planet. For example, if I had just met you, well, I haven't today just met you, but if you had come to me as a client and I was a phony and I just met you, I'd say, Diego, I sense some pain around you and like some worry and some difficulty about your health. And have there been some health issues? And you'd be going, oh, well, yeah, I mean, this and this and this and this. Well, guess what? I've hit 99% of the people on this planet on any given day, because that's the condition of the planet. We all suffer with health issues. We suffer with money issues. We suffer with job issues. We suffer with relationship issues. That is the norm on this planet. It's not the exception. It's the rule. And so by these phonies tuning into that, another funny thing I get is like, some psychic sits there on stage and they grunt and spaz and shake and grimace and they grip their head. There's going to be tornadoes in Texas this year. It's like, really? I grew up in West Texas, man. There's always tornadoes in Texas every year. Always. Tell me something that I don't know. If you're going to predict something, don't predict something that's 100% certainty that everybody on the planet knows. So that's another thing they'll do is they'll focus on things. Oh, there's earthquakes in California, tornadoes in Texas. Oh, there may be a really big blizzard in New York this year. Really? That's status quo for the planet, dude. It's like, so that's some of the things you have to watch out for.
Yeah. Now, if you could tell me there's going to be a tornado in Alaska and it happens, I might listen to you.
Yeah, there you go.
That's a whole different thing.
Follow acts, exactly.
and so then, well, which brings me to when somebody contacts you for a reading.
Yeah.
And from any part of the world, of course. How do you prepare yourself for it? They reach you to give them a few days? Well, give me 2 days and I'll prepare myself. Can you do a cold reading? How does that work? Because I really don't know.
I'm usually scheduled 3 to 6 months out, and I'll set the appointment time. And when their appointment time comes, I sit down about half an hour before time for me to call them, and I tune in on them and ask for my guys on the other side to come to me, tell them what I need to tell them. What do they need to know for their past, present, and future? Give me constructive things to improve their life, to improve their health, to help them connect better with their career path, to help them understand why they're on this planet and what they need to do, and so on and so forth. So I sit down and connect with the other side, and they give me that information. I write that down. And then during the reading, I give them that information when it's appropriate during the reading, but I allow them to ask questions too. I encourage them. I say, look, before our reading, sit down, write a list of questions that you want specific answers to. And the reason I do that, Diego, is the other side sees things from a different perspective than we do. And what I mean by that is, you may be going to the psychic going, am I going to get my ex-lover back? And the other side couldn't care less about that. They're saying, you need to get your butt back in college and finish that degree. That's the hot button. So I allow the client to write down their questions. I answer those. I give them the information that the other side gives me for them. That way we cover both sides of the coin.
No, and that's perfect, because I guess, like you said, there's more important things in life than what these people think. They might be on the wrong path, and maybe the spirits are telling you to put them on the right path.
Exactly. That's it. That's it. And I tell my clients, and I have this on my webpage, I said, I'm not going to guarantee satisfaction with your reading, because I'm not going to tell you what you want to hear. I may not tell you what you want to hear. There have been clients that have been so pissed off at me, so mad at me, they've left me bad reviews and everything else because I wouldn't tell them what they wanted to hear. I remember this one woman called up and she was like, she wanted to pursue this certain career path, and it was pretty exotic, pretty weird. And the other side showed me absolutely, positively, clearly for her, no matter how positive you think, no matter what you do, no matter how you train, no matter how you struggle, you're never going to make it. This is not your niche. This is not your career path. And I told her that. And she was like, that's not what I want to hear. And I said, I can't tell you anything other than the truth. This is just it. She was like, come on, get some real psychic power going here. Tell me what I want to hear. And I was like, I can't do that. This is not your career path. This is where you need to go, they're showing me. But that's not what she wanted to hear. But, you know, so you encounter that with people.
Yeah, and I would put that under that. That's exactly what they need to hear. So maybe they shouldn't be so wrapped up into what they want.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There are people that, I'll give you an example of that. I had some clients, two ladies that were friends. They would call me and get a reading with me. And they would always tell me, they'd say, if we're going to go to someone that we know is going to tell us the absolute truth, no matter what we want to hear, what we think it is, but is going to be honest with us, give us the truth, who are we going to go to? John. So they would get readings with me, and they said, we have a friend of ours that wants to get a reading with you, and she's going to call you. And I said, okay. So she called. I gave her the reading. And in the reading, one of the things that came to me was, your marriage is gone. Your marriage is shot. And she said, well, we're going through difficulties right now. Yeah, but I don't think it's over. And I said, no, it's over. I said, he's moved on, and you need to prepare to move on so that you're not heartbroken and you're not dragging around this ball and chain of trying to rescue this thing, beating a dead horse. I said, just prepare to move on. So we went on with the reading, and several times she recircled to that and said, are you sure the marriage is over? And I said, yeah, take it to the bank. So we ended the reading, and she was cordial, and I thought we ended on a good note. So several weeks later, her friends called, the two friends I regularly read for. And they said, John, we have to talk to you about so-and-so's reading. I said, I can't do that. That's confidential. I said, no. We're not asking you for information. We're giving you information. I said, what are you talking about? What do you mean? She said, okay, in your reading, she told us about the marriage being over, blah, blah, blah. And I said, yeah. I said, she didn't seem upset about it or anything. She said, John, she was livid. She was just furious. And she said she called, and they kept count, and they told me, and it may be more than this, but I know it was at least 10 without exaggeration. Like I say, I think it was more, but I'm certain it was at least 10. She said, John, she called 10 other psychics. And every single one of them told her, no, that guy was wrong. Your husband loves you. Your marriage is going to be saved. You're going to be together forever. Everything's going to be all right. And she said, John, he filed for divorce this week. So that's an example. I tell people, look, I'm not going to tell you what you want to hear. I'm going to tell you what you need to hear, what the other side gives me for you. that gives you some truth for your life that you can move forward with, unless you're stuck in that paradigm of, I'm only going to listen to a psychic that tells me I'm marrying tall, dark, and handsome and winning the lottery. You know, that's not real life.
No, in a way, that kind of worked out for you, because I think that client might have been looking for a pep talk, but wasn't really to receive the information. And I think that what solidifies your abilities, because you gave her the truth, and sometimes we don't want to hear it,
Exactly.
and that's okay. You know, we suck it up, we move on, we embrace the suck, as they used to say back in the day.
Right.
Now, I will say this: I will apologize to you, because we've been going over a lot of these things, but I have not gotten into your books, and there's quite a number of them. One of them really strikes to me, but when you're during the writing process, is it you, or are you getting help? I'm not talking about AI.
Yeah,
but I'm
both.
talking
Not
about
AI. No, never AI. All mine are human authored. No, I do get help. I get inspiration from the other side about how to phrase certain things, about remembering exactly how certain things occurred and what was spiritually important and significant in those events. So I do get that. And the rest of it is the hard work of a writer sitting down, putting his butt in the seat, showing up every day and churning the book out for 6 to 9 months and then publishing it. So it's difficult regardless.
I mean, I could assume definitely it is, because especially in the subject that you're writing about, I don't think it's something that can just be churned out over a weekend. We're talking about years of experience, years of receiving the information.
Right.
And if you don't mind, if I can talk about one of your books, it's very interesting. 20 Ways to Increase Your Psychic Abilities.
Yeah, that's one of my favorites, and that's one of the readers' favorites. The reason I wrote that book, Diego, was because over the years, the other side has taught me directly some spiritual tools and techniques that work, that manifest things in the physical realm. And I began to teach these things to my clients in their readings, and they would report back to me and say, John, I did this and it worked. It worked. And so I thought, well, idiot, write these things down in a book, make it available to everybody. And so 20 Ways to Increase Your Psychic Abilities is exactly that. There's 20 chapters. Each chapter has a different tool or technique to use. And what I do in the book is I introduce the subject. I tell you what it is. I define it for you. I explain how it works. I tell you step by step. I take you by the hand and lead you step by step through the process of learning it. And then I teach you how to apply it to the real world for positive results. And I simplified it. Everybody says, John, it's so easy. It's so simple. I can understand it. You know, because everybody likes to make the paranormal hard. You know, oh, I went to the temple of Isis for 40 years and then I meditated under a full moon for 2 years. And bull, you don't have to have none of that. You don't have to wear robes and cast a spell at midnight on the third Thursday of the month and blah, blah, blah. No, you don't have to do none of that. If you want to do this, here's the down, dirty, simple. It works. So I demystified it. I took away all the hard stuff. I took away all the rigmarole, the gobbledygook, the nomenclature. And I said, look, this is the technique. This is how it works. Here's how to do it. Now go do it. And anybody can do it. So that's why I wrote the book. I wanted to make it easy. I wanted to make it simple. I wanted to give people things that they could use to improve their lives, make their lives better, and also to demystify and de-scarify the spiritual realm, because people have been taught by the so-called ghost hunters on TV that everything's demonic, malevolent, evil, dangerous, blah, blah, blah. And that's not the case. You know, I've conducted way over 1,000 paranormal investigations in my lifetime. I've never been scratched, bit, hit, kicked, bitten, told to get out, cursed, whatever, blah, blah, blah. That's never happened. My experience with the paranormal in all these years has been overwhelmingly positive, and the other side has literally, physically saved my life on many occasions. And so people need to understand that, number one, what the so-called ghost hunters and people like that give you on TV and in the books and so on, that's malarkey. That's not how it really is to interact with the other side. The other thing is, if you go into interaction with the other side with a preconceived notion that it's going to be dangerous or going to be scary or something bad's going to happen, you're setting yourself up to misinterpret anything that happens as something scary or dangerous or malevolent or whatever, when it's not. And so in my book, I demystify all of that. I take all the fear away. I tell you, look, this is how it is. This is what's going to happen. And if there's a technique in here that you run across that you feel uncomfortable with or that scares you, guess what? Don't do it. Move on to another chapter, So, and I have a whole chapter on the Ouija board in there for all the people that are going, oh God, John, the Ouija board, aren't you aware? Listen, people will decry the Ouija board and they will sit down and use a crystal ball, a deck of tarot cards, a pendulum, dowsing rods, on and on and on and on. It's the same motive energy. When you sit down and use a Ouija board, you're using the same energy and connecting with the same energy that you use to use a pendulum or dowsing rods or a crystal ball or tarot cards or anything else. So I'm so amused at people because, the Ouija board's evil. You watch The Exorcist too many times, folks. It's like, that was a fiction movie, okay? So in this book, I tell people, look, here's the real deal about things. And here's, you can go into this without fear of all these things happening. And people, I'm going to attract a spirit. I'm going to get an attachment or this. And guess what? Where you're sitting right now, listening to me and Diego on this podcast, you've got spirit beings all in your house around you all the time. Your deceased loved ones, your guardian angels, your spirit guides, animal spirits, nature spirits. They occupied this space with us on this planet all the time, concurrently. So, there's all these things that we have fear of are a natural part of the condition of living on this planet. But that was the main reason in writing this book, was to give people some things that they can use to help their lives, improve their lives. And readers around the world have sent me emails, have communicated to me, said, John, I did it. It worked. It's helped me. So that was the blessing of being able to write that book. And there is a follow-up coming down the road in a few years, 20 more ways to increase your psychic abilities, because I thought I was through. And I was sitting there one day while I was writing, and the other side said, hey, John, remember this technique? Remember that technique? You didn't talk about this? I was like, oh, my God. And I had 20 more things that are super, super valuable that really work to add into that. So there will be a follow-up book coming, as well as additional books about the paranormal experiences, what they taught me, what the readers can learn. And there will be a new book in that vein coming out this year titled The Kansak Ghost that'll come out in summer this year.
Awesome. So, finally something out there that's to help you better yourself, is just trying to scare you and give you stories to just to sell copies. And that's all fine and dandy, but I think we've all reached a point in our lives where I think we might have outgrown some of that, and now we're ready to receive some better information and to just help ourselves.
Some real truth. Yeah.
And now for the listeners, our friends that listen to the show, that they want to learn more about you, they want to learn more about your books and your research, and maybe one day set up a reading by you, where can they go find this out?
They can go to johnrussell.net, and that's my website for my psychic work, my readings, all my bio, my client testimonials, my media appearances and history of their media testimonials, everything there you need to know, and an easy way to set up a reading. The wait time is 3 to 6 months for a reading. So that's the website for that. For my books, go to johnrussellauthor.com, johnrussellauthor.com. And you can always go to my Amazon page. Just look for John Russell on Amazon. My author page is there. The links to my books are all there, obviously. But at johnrussellauthor.com, the links are there to all my books. There's endorsements, testimonials, reviews, everything there. You'll find all that there, so people can find out everything there that they want.
Excellent. And I really appreciate you taking the time off your very busy schedule to be on the show. And if you don't mind, I'd like to ask you to come on, maybe later this year or when the next book comes out. Let's talk about it, I'd
love to. Let's do that. Yeah, let's I'll let you know when we get published here in summer. The book's available. Come back on. We'll talk some more. We haven't even scratched the surface. We've got so much we could talk about. I've got deceased animals that came back in the flesh, physically in the flesh, to visit me, and UFO experiences, all these things. We've got so much more to talk about, and just be an honor to me. It'd be wonderful to come back and talk with you again.
I'm looking forward to it, my friend. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Make contact, stay connected. Hey friends, Diego the Podcaster here, asking you to please subscribe today to KGRA Digital Broadcasting. KGRA Digital Broadcasting is the #1 official contact for the best paranormal and alternative digital broadcasting network on the planet. Subscribe today and get full access to all content. Watch or listen to shows in our classic vault containing all our current archives and the KGRA classic broadcasts. Use promo code Let's Find Out and save 30% on your membership. That's promo code Let's Find Out in all caps to save 30% off your membership today. Make contact, stay connected. Go to KGRADB.com. That's KGRADB.com today.
Let's find out with Diego! The power of Diego madness! Ooh, yeah!
All content for Let's Find Out is property of co-host Diego and is served directly from our servers with no modification, redirects, or rehosting. All celebrity impersonators are paid performers. The impersonated celebrities do not endorse or promote any views or opinions expressed by our guests, co-host Diego, or Let's Find Out. The information shared on Let's Find Out is provided on an as-is basis, with no guarantees of completeness, accuracy, usefulness, or timeliness.